So, good evening, everybody. My name is Brother Michael. I'm going to be sharing some time with you tonight to be able to share a little bit about the practice, especially considering Thanksgiving's coming up soon. So tonight, I'd like to also share with you guys the Sutra on Love. And also, we'll also be doing a meditation as well, or loving kindness meditation. A lot of times it's very easy for us to show love to other people, but sometimes it's not as easy to show ourselves that love, right? And also without us having that love inside of us, it's very hard for us to be able to give it to somebody else sometimes as well. So it's a two-way street. So this is an opportunity for us to be able to practice that and show ourselves that self-care, that love. Especially also, one of the things that my teacher always reminded me when he was still living was peace in oneself, peace in the world, right? So that peace has to come from inside of you first and foremost. And then the other thing that he always reminded us is, my life is my message, right? So if you're wanting to live a life of peace, but the way that you go about it or the actions don't correspond, then it's going to be very hard, right? So I'd like to invite the sound of the bell and for us to be able to breathe together for a little bit before we start practice. So go ahead and sit straight up. Dear respected Thai, dear respected Sangha, tonight we have an opportunity to be together, and one of the practices that we practice within the Plum Village tradition is we have gathas, or poems, that allow us to practice. And a couple of the poems that I'd like to share with you tonight. One is inviting the bell. So when we invite the bell, we're inviting the bell to sound to help us in our practice. So when we're inviting that bell, we can also recite, body, speech, mind, in perfect oneness. I send my heart along with the sound of the bell. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow, right? And one of the most important things when inviting the bell is you have to have that peace within inside of yourself. That's what we call the bell master, because they're helping everybody else to be able to practice. And if you don't have that stability, you don't have that peace within inside of yourself, it's very hard for you to invite the sound of the bell to be able to help others to be able to practice, right? And so you have to be able to breathe. You have to be able to come back to yourself, come back to our true home inside of us. A lot of times we're carried away in our thoughts, our emotions, But a lot of times we also need to come back and be with inside of our body, right? How many of us are so busy doing this, doing that, running after this, running after that, but we forget to be, and we forget to be human, right? We forget to allow ourselves to feel, right? It's okay if we're having a bad day, right? Why are we being a terrorist to ourselves? Because a lot of times we can't take that out of us. How many of you guys can take a feeling out of you? Right? If you guys are feeling sad, if you guys are feeling frustrated, if you're feeling angry, right? The only thing that's going to help calm that is when we can sit with it. And Tara Brock also shares quite a bit about the RAIN philosophy, right? Which is recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. So what are we recognizing? We're recognizing that it's arising inside of us. We're allowing it to just be, to just sit with it. And another way to allow it to be, we might not just be able to sit. We might have to do walking meditation, right? And the most important thing is investigating. And what are we investigating? We're investigating what's coming up for us in this moment, right here, right now. Where is that feeling coming from? It could be coming from a hurt that we've had previously or in the past. Right? Because we're also 50% to blame. Right? But a lot of times we tend to want to point our finger at somebody else. But we also have that seed of hurt. We also have that seed of whether we feel abandoned or we feel alone. Right? Those seeds are also inside of us. But when we can investigate, we can go further and look deeper at ourselves. Where is that suffering coming from? Where is that hurt coming from? And just like a mother who loves her child, the mother will rock the baby, right? The mother's not going to run up to the baby, hey, what's the matter? What's going on, right? A baby can't talk yet. A toddler can't talk. But the mother will know what's going on when she holds on to that baby. The mother will know if the baby needs to be changed, if the baby's hungry, whatever the situation is. Allowing ourselves to come back to ourselves and just sit, just be still. One of the calligraphies that my teacher used to have that I really enjoyed was be still and heal. Right? If you look at a chicken, and if you put a chicken in a box, if the chicken just sit still, the chicken would be okay. But the chicken actually does more damage to itself because it starts getting anxious and it starts moving around in the box. and hitting itself against the side of the box. Right? So if we have the opportunity to come back to ourselves and be still, we don't cause as much damage to ourselves. But a lot of times, we get overruled by our emotions. And that's the reason why we need to be able to come back and be able to breathe and be able to calm our nervous system. Scientifically proven, the only thing that can help calm your nervous system is coming back to your breath. And I've seen veterans that I've worked with that are in a fight or flight response, and I work with them on their breathing. And you'd be amazed at how fast they can calm down. Just last week, I was working with a veteran. He's all like, oh, my mind's running so much, I can't meditate. So recently, I purchased a number of sound bowls, the 7 chakra set sound bowls from Jeff here at the Buddha for You store. And I had one of the sound bowls there. And he said he can't meditate because his mind is racing a mile a minute. I invited that sound bowl. He was able to sit there for 15 minutes and breathe and listen to that sound bowl. And I was joking with him, and I was all like, I thought you said you couldn't meditate. Right? He felt so much lighter. Because a lot of times we're stuck in our head. We're stuck in our mind. And the thing is, some scientists also shared that we can't solve a problem when we're looking at it from the same level. So that basically means that we also have to look at it from different points of view. How many of you have studied so hard and tried to cram more stuff into your brain when your brain's already overloaded? How much more can you get in there? Any of you guys? You know, there used to be a story about a gentleman that all he wanted to do was study the Buddhist scriptures and go up and try to engage the Zen masters in a Dharma battle. One day he went up to a temple and he asked to see the master, the abbot of the temple. The abbot invited him in to drink some tea. But all he wanted to do was continue to argue with the abbot. So when the abbot was pouring the tea into the cup, the abbot continued to pour until that cup overran. And the guy was all like, "What are you doing? Stop already." And the abbot continued to pour. And the gentleman was all like, "What are you doing? Why are you pouring that tea? continuing to pour that tea. And the teacher goes, your mind, it's just like that cup. When it's full and you continue to pour into it, all it's going to do is overrun. You're not going to be able to keep any of it. So if you're practicing and you're not really applying the practice and you're just gaining the knowledge, then it's just going to overflow the cup. Another one of the gathas is the second inviting of the bell. And this is what we normally recite when we invite that bell. May the sound of this bell penetrate deeply into the cosmos and even the darkest places. May living beings hear it clearly, so their suffering will cease. Understanding arises in their heart, and they can transcend the path of anxiety and sorrow. Because when we invite that bell, it's not only helping them, it's also helping us to be able to practice. One of the other things that there's also a gatha for listening to the bell. I listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. Our true home inside of ourselves. Coming back to the present moment, right here, right now. Letting go of things that happened 5 minutes ago. So that way we can live our appointment with our life, right here, right now. Right? The past is already in the past. The future is not yet here. But we do have the present moment right here, right now, to be able to breathe, to be able to take care of ourselves. And when we look at our practice, right, our past is in the past. But if we dwell on that past, we dwell within our depression. We dwell with, oh, it could have been like this, it could have been like that. Right? And when we deal with our future too much, we deal with our worry and anxiety. But how do you calm your depression and your anxiety? By coming back to your breath in this very moment. But when you can come back to your breathing in this very moment, 5 minutes from now, what does that become? That becomes your past. But you just now created a happier past. Another gatha that we use for listening to the bell. Hearing the bell, I let go of all my afflictions. My heart is calm. My sorrow ended. I am no longer bound to anything. I learned to listen to my suffering and the suffering of others. When understanding is born in me, compassion is also born. Because when we also understand ourselves better, we can also understand somebody else better. We can also understand their hurt, their pains. And when we understand their hurt and pains, that allows us to be able to love them as well as their suffering. That allows us to be able to have empathy for them. because we also know what it is to suffer. Each one of us has our own suffering that we deal with. One of the practices that I normally do is calming the body and mind. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is wonderful. This present moment is a gift to us. But the important thing is, do we know how to take care of it? Because this present moment is not coming around again. And the saying goes, you can't swim in the same river twice. Because that water has already passed. That water has already flowed away. So live your life each day, each moment. A lot of times we trap ourselves in our own cell. And that cell is the cell of our thoughts. We close that door. We don't allow ourselves to also be free. And we let the confines, or we let somebody else be the writer and the director of our own life movie. When we have the ability to write that script, we have the ability to direct that movie ourselves. But we give that power, we give that ability to someone else. How many of you rent out space to someone else in your head? Somebody says something to you and you hold on to it. And you dwell on it. He said this, she said that. And the thing is, does that person really know you? Is that person that said that important in your life? Now, I'd like to invite us to be able to do a metta meditation or a loving kindness meditation. So the metta meditation starts off with yourself. So I'd like to invite you to go ahead and sit upright and silently recite to yourself, may I be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. And when you recite that to yourself, I really want you, or I really encourage you and invite you to feel it in your body, what it would be like to be peaceful within your own body, what it would be to be happy Would it be like to be light in body and spirit? May I be safe and free from injury? What would it feel like to be safe within your own body, within your own mind? Free, just like infinite space, and not having any injuries. May I be free from anger, fear, and anxiety. What would it feel like to be free from your anger, your fear, your anxiety, not having it take control of you, not having to worry about it, creating that peace, creating that space within inside of you? May I learn to look at myself with eyes of understanding and love. How often have we looked at ourselves with that eyes of understanding and love? May I recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. What would it feel like to touch those seeds of joy and happiness inside of yourself? What brings you joy? What brings you happiness? True happiness. True joy. May I learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in myself. Learning to recognize the sources of that anger, of that craving, to be able to come back and take care of it, to better understand ourselves, and to better tend to ourselves. May I know how to nourish the seeds of joy in myself each and every day. May I live fresh, solid, and free. May I be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. And this meditation can start off with ourselves, and we can expand it after practicing it for a week or a month, expanding it a little bit out to our friends, our family members, people that we hold close to us, because they need love also. And this is a way that we can also send them that love when we practice that love and kindness to ourselves and allowing it to radiate out to them. And then maybe in a month or so, you can extend it out to people that you don't necessarily know, that you might come into contact with every day, but they're not really within your very close personal circle. And then practice that for a month. And then extend it out to people that might have hurt you. because they're also suffering too. That's not saying that what they did to you is right. But they're also suffering as well. Just like you suffer. When they suffer, they might have been unskillful and might have said things or done things that might have hurt. But when you hold on to it, then that poison eats away at you, not them. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the Sutra on Love. Right? And this is what the Sutra basically says. Someone who wants to attain peace should practice being upright, humble, and capable of using loving speech. They will know how to live simply and happily with senses calm, without being covetous and carried away by the emotions of the majority. Let them not do anything that will be disapproved of by the wise ones. And this is what they contemplate. May everybody be happy and safe, and may their hearts be filled with joy. May all beings live in security and in peace. Beings who are frail or strong, tall or short, big or small, invisible or visible, near or far away, already born or yet to be born. May all of them dwell in perfect tranquility. Let no one do harm to anyone. Let no one put the life of anyone in danger. Let no one, out of anger or ill will, wish anyone harm. Just as a mother loves and protects her only child at the risk of her own life, let us cultivate our love to offer to all living beings in the entire cosmos. Let our boundless love pervade the whole universe, above, below, and across. Our love will know no obstacles. Our heart will be absolutely free from hatred and enmity. Whether standing or walking, sitting or lying, as long as we are awake, we should maintain this mindfulness of love in our own heart. This is the noblest way of living, free from wrong views, greed, and sensual desires, living in beauty and realizing perfect understanding. Those who practice boundless love will certainly transcend the birth and death. Boundless or unconditional love and placing conditions on our love. Unconditional, not limited by conditions, absolute. A lot of times when we love, we also have conditions on that love. We need to do this. We expect this person to do this or do that in order for us to be able to reciprocate that love. That's love with conditions. That's not unconditional love. And in the sutra, it talks about covetous. And in the dictionary, this is the word, the definition for covetous. Wrongly desirous of wealth or possessions, greed or eagerly desirous. And also within the dictionary, they broke down love into 7 different types of love. The first type of love is romantic, passionate love of the body, passion, lust, sexual attraction. The second love is affectionate, friendly love, friendly, soul to soul, loyalty, trust, encouraging, kind, affectionate, equal love. The third love is unconditional, familial love that parents have for their children, a protective love, a kinship. The fourth type is agape, which is selfless, universal love, empathetic, selfless for others that include a love for a higher power, nature, strangers, and the less fortunate. The fifth type of love is a playful, flirtatious love, easy breezy, non-committal, having a crush on someone, infatuation. The sixth type of love is committed, long-lasting love, long-term marriage and friendship, built on commitment, endurance, compassion, sharing similar hope for the future. The seventh type of love is self-love. Goes hand in hand with self-worth, confidence, and the boost of self-esteem that is necessary for the sense of one's purpose. So that's why when we talk about love, we also need to look at what type of love is it, right? A lot of time we also misuse the word love. A lot of people say, oh, I love hamburgers, or I love pasta. Right? So we need to really look at what our intention in that love is. And some of the loves that I was talking about, it's also being able to have gratitude, right? Because when we have gratitude, we also feel alive. We also feel grateful. You know, Thanksgiving's coming up soon. So this is also an opportunity for us to look at what we're grateful for. You know, what kind of loves do we have in our life? Do we really cherish the people that are around us? Because we don't know when that person is no longer going to be by our side, or we can no longer be by their side. You know, like if you live far away from your parents, or your parents might not be here any longer. So during the time that you still have them around, spend time with them. Be with them. Cherish them. Show them how much you love them. So when the day that comes and they're no longer by your side, you have no regrets. Right? Our body is impermanent. We're impermanent. Our bodies are just a leased vehicle. So I really encourage you to cherish the people that you have around you. That's why I remind my friends, I remind my veterans all the time. I would rather receive a phone call from you at 4:30 in the morning when you need to talk to somebody than have to attend your funeral. My door is always open. My phone is always on. A cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a meal is always ready. I would rather spend my time sitting there and talking with you than having to attend your funeral and share something about you. We all struggle in life. So if you need help, please reach out to somebody. You know, every single day, there's more and more stuff placed on us. And one of the things that within the mental health world, we usually say, the first 7 years after you get a diagnosis or a diagnosis is usually the hardest. Because those first 7 years, you have a lot of negative talk. You have a lot of self-talk, right? You're still figuring out what it means to have this diagnosis. You're still struggling to figure out, how is my life going to be like? Or what's my life going to be like? Right? And a lot of times we end up beating ourselves up for it when we don't need to. How many of you have heard the word no in your life? Do you know what another way of looking at the word no? Instead of getting defensive. No stands for next opportunity. Right? This might not be the right time for you. There might be something better waiting for you. But it's all a matter of how we choose to look at it. Just like the word fear, right? Fear can also mean face everything and run. Or it can also mean face everything and rise. And if you look at the word hope, what's an acronym for the word hope that we can use? Help other people evolve. Right? It's all a way of how we look at things. What's the very first thing that they tell us when we get on an airplane with a oxygen mask? Right? You need to put that oxygen mask on yourself first before you help anybody else. Because if you're not breathing oxygen, how are you supposed to help the person next to you? So I don't know if you guys have any questions or comments or anything that you guys would like to share. but it's now open.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you help veterans deal with big transitions in their life, whether it's separating from service or career, personal relationships. Sometimes things don't happen in a timely manner or, or what people are expecting. And that creates anxiety, or fear, and what kind of strategies you use to help with transitions are hard for everybody.
So basically dealing with helping our veterans with transitioning, whether it's from the military to civilian life or transitioning within our own life. That's the reason why they say patience is a virtue, right? In the military, there's a saying that all military members and all veterans know, which is hurry up and wait, right? So they tell you you have to get to a doctor's appointment at 8 o'clock. You show up at 7:45 and you're sitting there waiting until 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock rolls around, you're still sitting there waiting, right? Because it's hurry up and wait. And they know that way too well, right? But the thing is, that's the reason why when I work with them, I help them set smart goals, right? Which is, I ask them, it has to be very specific, right? It has to be measurable. It has to be action-oriented. It has to be realistic. It has to be time-bound. And one example that I use is with my veterans is, for instance, if you haven't worked out, right, in the last 15 years, but you tell me, oh, I want to go run a marathon in 3 months, I'm going to be all like, good luck with that, right? Because running a marathon takes a lot of work. You have to start pacing yourself. You have to start building that tolerance up. You have to start building that stamina up. But if you say a year from now, I want to go run a marathon, that's more doable. Or running a half marathon, right? So the very first thing that I'm going to ask you, have you thought about, are you running street or are you running trail? Right? Second question that I'm going to ask you, have you looked at shoes? Because if you haven't thought about, are you running street or are you running trails, or what kind of shoes you're going to wear, then you can't start running it, right? So those are little action steps, which might mean you go to a specialty running store where they have the things to measure your orthotics, or they can measure how your foot turns in and out while you're running, right? How many times a week do you want to start running? Maybe you want to just start walking, right? So my next suggestion to you would be, take your shoes that you just bought, put them next to the door, put them next to the dog leash, because you know you have to go walk your dog, right? So use that time to start walking your dog to start off with. Then slowly start running with your dog. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to check back in with you, because of the fact that we don't want you to set the bar so high that you don't achieve it, right? Because when you set that bar so high and you don't achieve it, what happens? You become disappointed. You don't want to do it, right? That's the reason why I share with people, break it down into digestible chunks. Because when you hit that goal, you're going to want to go to the next goal. right? For most people, they go, if they don't go directly into college, they start at a community college, right? They get their AA, then they get their bachelor's, then they get their master's, then they get their PhD, right? That's exactly the same thing. If you try to go straight from high school and go straight up to your PhD, that's going to be a very hard task, right? So that's the reason why it has to be, that's the reason why we use SMART goals. And that's what I do as a whole health coach. So I talk to them, and I'm a life coach. So kind of like Oriental medicine, right? That's the difference between Western medicine and Oriental medicine, right? Western medicine looks at the symptoms only, and then they toss medication at it to cover up those symptoms or numb those symptoms, so you don't feel them any longer. And they think that that gets rid of the problem. That doesn't get rid of the problem, right? And a lot of times we know Western medication, when you take medication, you then have side effects to the medication that you took, right? And so now you're taking 5 more medications to combat that side effect, which then you have 5 more side effects from each one of those new medications that you're taking. So you're taking a whole cocktail of medications, right? Where Oriental medicine, they take everything into account that's going on in your life when they do acupuncture, right? When they do cupping. They're looking at how your family dynamic is. What kind of stress do you have in your life? That's the reason why Oriental medicine takes a lot longer to work than Western medicine, right? And that's the whole thing with being a life coach. You're taking into account the person's spirituality. You're taking into account the person's situation with their family, coworkers, and friends. You're taking into account how their ability or how strong their mind is, right? You're also taking into account how do they rest and recharge themselves. What's their personal development like? What's their professional development like, right? Because within the circle of whole health, all those 8 areas make us up: our food and drink, right? Power of mind. You know, so all those areas come into effect. And that's the reason why when I work with veterans, I ask them specifically what it is that they want to work on. And we slowly start making changes, and we ask scaling questions. So between a scale of 1 and 5, where are you currently right now? You know, and if they say like 3, you're right. Then the next question to them is, why is it a 3 and not a 4? Or what makes it a 3? Right? So that way they have to think about it, and you're putting them at the center of the whole situation. And you're putting them into a mindful awareness where they become aware of what's going on inside of them. Because the thing is, as a provider, I can tell you what I want you to do. But if you don't buy into it, nothing's going to happen, right? So that's the reason why we always ask the question, what matters to you? Not what's the matter with you, right? How many times do we go to the doctor and the first thing out of the doctor's mouth is, what's the matter with you? Right? As a life coach, as a whole health coach, we ask you what matters to you, right? And we use the word and. We don't use the word but. Because when we use the word and, we show you that you have this value, but you also have this barrier in the way. So it depends on which one you choose is going to depend on how the outcome's going to be, right? We allow you to see your obstacles or barriers, as we call them, and your values. Because when we tie it to your values, you're going to want to make that change because it's something that you value. And that's where behavioral change comes in, right? Because I can tell you until I'm blue in the face, right? But you're not going to do it. And that's the reason why when I work with my veterans, I also apply what we call PTSD, right? Which means positive thinking, self-care development, not post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Because when we change our thinking and we think positively, that automatically rewires our brain, right? How far can we get if every single day all we're doing is complaining, right? If we're always complaining, what we're rewiring our brain for is despair. Because all we see is negative, right? But when we start thinking positively, that rewires our brain for hope. And that's the reason why I used to be a peer specialist, which is a fellow veteran with lived experience with addiction, recovery, mental health, as well as, alcohol and drugs, right? And they used to use a program called RAP, which is Wellness Recovery Action Plan, right? And the only thing with RAP is that a lot of time it operates from a place of deficit. So if you're operating from a place of deficit, how are you supposed to move forward? Right? Whereas whole health, we operate from a place of value. So you're already starting off talking about your values. You're not talking about your barriers as much, right? And the RAP model, a lot of times they operate from a place of crisis. Like you're always prepared for crisis. You're always prepared for crisis. And that gets drilled into your head, right? Yes, we know that in the recovery process, we might backslide. That's a given, but if it keeps getting pounded into your head, again, that's the only thing that you're going to think about, right? So therefore, when we can operate from a place of moving forward and having or helping that person to be able to see the value in their life, right? And that's the reason why I always share with my veterans. In Japan, they have now taken Japanese pottery and they smash it on purpose, right? And they re-infuse it with gold and silver. And they put it back together. And when you do that, that now becomes a work of art, and it now becomes more valuable. But on the same token, that's also us, right? If we're broken and we learn how to heal ourselves, don't we become more valuable? Right? And the other thing is, we go from being a patient to the physician now, because we have that lived experience of how to handle that, how to be able to take care of that, right? Because we have lived experience. That's the reason why when a peer specialist says something to another person that's going through addiction, they listen, because this person has life experience in recovery, right? It's not something that they picked up reading from a book, right? They've lived through that torment and that hell, and they've come out the other side, right? So they have lived experience. Any other questions? If there's no more questions, go ahead and sit straight up and relax. If you want to, go ahead and close your eyes. Let's breathe together to end the night together.